The views expressed on this podcast are our own and do not constitute endorsement by the Department of War, the Department of the Air Force, or the U.S. government. Bring us her triumphs, her challenges, her legacy. Bring Us Women, a podcast brought to you by Isabella Horning and Ali Fatso.
Hi friends, welcome back to Bring Us Women, the podcast where we talk, we laugh, and occasionally spiral together.
And you bet we're good at that. So, if you've been listening for a while, it recently occurred to us that we've spent all this time telling you about other people's amazing stories without ever really introducing ourselves.
Boo. Honestly, that feels a little backwards, so today we're switching things up with a mini episode, just the two of us.
We want to properly introduce ourselves, talk about how this podcast came to be, and share exactly why Bring Us Women matters so much to us.
Okay, Isa, before we go any further, we should probably talk about the name because we've had so many of our listeners asking us all the time, how did you guys even come up with this name?
No, and that's a great question because I love our name, and there's a lot of history behind it.
Bring Us Women is a play on words inspired by the stone wall above the ramp at the Air Force Academy that incoming cadets march under.
For years, the words "Bring me men" were literally carved into that ramp.
That's actually insane. I am trying to imagine walking under that ramp and seeing that and being like, you know what? I belong here. This is my new home for the next 4 years, and I'm going to do the damn thing.
Exactly. What a way to welcome young female future officers into the Air Force, am I right? But eventually, the Bring Me Men ramp was removed in 2003, but that was long after women had already proven we belong there.
So when Isa and I were thinking about a name, we wanted something that acknowledged that history, but also reclaimed it.
And honestly, once we kind of locked down that name, the why behind this podcast became impossible for us to ignore.
Bring Us Women was created in celebration of the 50th anniversary of women being admitted to the U.S. service academies, which is actually coming up in April.
It's crazy. It's been 50 years. But this podcast, we want it to be more than that. It's about honoring the women who came before us and uplifting the women who are still making history right now.
So when all of this was going down, we decided that we wanted to build a network and really a space where women could share their stories and their experiences.
Yeah, and a lot of that was because these are things that Ali and I wish that we could have right now in our own careers. So we're building a ladder so that the women coming after us don't have to figure out everything alone.
Which actually leads perfectly into how we wanted this podcast to feel for all of you, because this was never meant to be overly polished or formal.
So for all of our listeners, think of this as a catch-up with your girlfriends. Honest, unfiltered, probably on your third glass of wine, and ranting about how your workday just went.
So we're here for the women behind the rank, the moments you don't see on paper, and the conversations that don't fit so neatly into a bio.
Exactly. And so for that vibe to work, it has to become bigger than just the two of us. Yes, Ali and I can yap away all day on these microphones, but we really need the community to come into play here because that's what's most important.
Which is why in season 1, we focused on female officers who graduated from U.S. service academies to help celebrate that 50th anniversary.
But moving forward, we want to expand that because there are so many incredible women serving in the U.S. military. So we want to interview different ranks, different branches, different career paths, both inside and post their military career.
We're also looking at bringing on mil-to-mil couples, civ-mil couples, because let's be honest, the family dynamic just makes serving takes it to a whole nother level.
Exactly.
We also want experts in women's health and fitness to help us with our training. Me and Isa are both super into our fitness and the healthy lifestyle. And so we want to kind of take that to the next level for ourselves as well as our listeners. And we also want organizations that support women in and out of uniform.
We want to give you all the resources, all the questions, all the answers that you're sitting at home after a long day of work just thinking about, wow, this would make your life so much easier if you had this. And honestly, we also want to hear from you. Tell us what conversations you need, what would be helpful, what would have been helpful, what'll help the next generation so that we can continue to build that ladder together.
And looking ahead a little too, this isn't just an online thing for us either.
In 2026, we're planning to attend the 50th year anniversary celebration hosted by USAFA Women in Colorado Springs, and boy, are we excited for that.
And subtle plug, if you haven't gotten your tickets, what are you doing? Go online and get those right now, because we genuinely hope to meet a lot of you there. This podcast exists because of this amazing community that we're building.
And if you've already got your tickets, or hurry and go do that now, we hope that you come up and say hi to us. We'll be running around with a microphone. If you see two crazy girls, probably maybe a little lost, having way too much fun, that's us. Come say hi. We want to meet you. We want to hear your story. And, we just want to have a great time. So kind of getting into the who's Allie and who's Isa thing, it's hard to make this a community thing without knowing who your hosts are, which, again, apologies. Maybe we should have done this from the start. But here we go. We're going to dive right into who Allie and Isa are on the Bring Us Women podcast.
Awesome. Just since you offer that up, Isa, let's start with you. What brought you to the Air Force Academy?
So, let's see. I'm probably going to be a big nerd for saying this, but I've wanted to go to the Air Force Academy since I was in 7th grade. Yep, you heard that right. I literally marched into my 8th grade parent-teacher conference and told my 8th grade teacher that my plan for the rest of my life was to go to the Air Force Academy. And she was shocked. And she was like, any backups, anything other than the Air Force Academy? And I was like, nope, literally that's it. If I don't get in, I'll reapply, and then I'll reapply, and then I'll reapply, and then I'll probably cry at that point in time if I don't get in. So anywho, I applied senior year of high school when honestly a lot of people were not quite sure that I would get in. Turns out they were right. I did not get in my first time applying to the academy, but I was offered a Falcon Foundation scholarship. So for anyone who doesn't know, if you don't get direct admission into the Air Force Academy, you could possibly go to the USAFA Prep School in Colorado Springs, or a Falcon Foundation scholarship to one of the many prep schools across the country. And you spend a year kind of prepping and doing some extra work to make you a better candidate to get into the class the following year. So I went to the New Mexico Military Institute, which was kind of crazy. First time leaving home, going all the way from Florida out to New Mexico. And I went there for a year, worked really, really hard, reapplied again to the Air Force Academy, and then thankfully, on my second try, got into the class of 2022.
Hey, I love that because, some of us, we're just special. The Academy wanted us so bad that they were willing to put an extra year of time and resources into us to make sure that we were attending their institution. So
exactly. And, looking back at it, I couldn't even imagine doing it in 4 years. Shout out to everyone who's done the 5-year plan. You're the real ones.
Girl, the way I think, I was not ready. An additional year could not have prepared me for what I was about to experience, but here we are and we made it. So after all of that, graduating the academy, what pulled you towards creating a space like Bring Us Women?
So I honestly, when I think about this question, I think of two main reasons. The first one being is that I've always been super passionate and a huge nerd when it comes to leadership and mentorship, because I've been really fortunate to have really great mentors throughout my cadet life and now post-graduation, to have those really good people in your corner to fight for you, to show you the right path in life, all of that. But I've also noticed throughout that process that not everyone has that. And it's really sad to me when people are out there just kind of floating through, hoping that guidance finds them, when having mentorship, having great leadership can really change your life in a lot of ways.
100%.
Exactly. And I know you and I have talked about this a lot. And so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to start this podcast. The other reason, kind of selfishly for myself, is I personally think, you being one of my really good friends, we have a lot of incredible, badass female friends that are in the Air Force and in other branches of the military. Do. And so I'm every single week, honestly, I'm am I doing enough in my life? Because my friend over here is yes, doing her Space Force job, but she's also working as an EMT, applying to med school, training for the Boston Marathon. I'm like, wow. I'm like, am I doing something wrong over here? So really, my friends are just so incredible that I'm like, their stories, my mentor stories, the people that I've met, their stories need to be shared. They need to be heard. Young girls need to hear it. Other women need to hear it so that they know they're not going through things alone, or they know that they can literally dream, shoot for the stars, because we all love those delusional goals. And if you don't know what you don't know, it's hard to see those goals and make those goals for yourself. So I wanted this podcast to give women that and to show them that you can literally do anything. Like, literally anything.
And Issa, I love that because that's even shout out to Melaine Valentine that was on our podcast. She really said it. Like, if you've never seen it, you cannot fundamentally dream to be it. So those female mentors are so important in our lives, and I couldn't agree more with you about our friends. I think it takes a very special group of people to tell us that are like super goal oriented go getters that our dreams aren't big enough, you know? And I think that that's such a special quality to find in a group of friends.
Exactly. Because I feel like it's so incredible to sit back and be like, wow, do I need to set a bigger dream? And honestly, that's kind of how this podcast came to be, because I was like, wow, all my friends are doing these incredible things. Why should I be afraid to start a podcast? You know?
True. True. Hey, you're doing it. What is something that listeners would be shocked to know about you?
So, I am definitely a huge introvert. I've been a huge introvert my entire life. I was the kid that was afraid to raise their hand in class, afraid to do a presentation in front of class. I'd rather be sick, all of that. And honestly, like to this day, my parents and I still joke about how I was that kid, and now I'm doing a job in the Air Force that requires me to brief in front of audiences and a podcast where I'm talking to who knows who's listening. But deep down, I'm an introvert.
Which is hard for me to hear because this woman calls me multiple times a week and we're on the phone for hours. I'm like, "Oh, sorry, husband dear. I have to talk to Issa all evening. You can wait for me." But I think you just have to find the people in your life that'll open you up and the type of hobbies that will push you to do those things that you never thought that you would do. So I'm, for one, super proud of you for getting on this platform and being like, you know what? To hell with being an introvert. Today, we're an extrovert.
Exactly. I guess I should put that out as like a fair warning, because I'm an introvert on the surface, and you're like, oh, like, look at this nice girl over here, doesn't talk, probably a weirdo. I don't even know. If you become my friend, better hide your phone. I'm calling. I'm yapping. I'm hearing about your day. I'm hearing about your husband's day. I'm hearing it all. I want to talk.
She's here for the tea. Issa, what do you like to do in your free time?
So, aside from this podcast, which has taken up a lot of my free time, which has been a fun hobby to embark on, I love working out, and that's mostly in the form of CrossFit. But I love weightlifting, love working out. And then on the flip side of working out, I work out so that I can eat. I also love to eat in my free time, whether that be cooking, trying new recipes, going out to eat with my friends and trying new restaurants, all of that.
I also am food motivated. So if anyone that listens to our podcast becomes a professional chef, please hit us up. Even if you're not a professional chef and you're also just a foodie, we'd love to talk about meal preps, all the things, because I've been eating sweet potatoes for 3 months or more straight, and I need to change it up a little bit. So, well, speaking about sweet potatoes, what's your AFSC and what are you currently working on?
Wow, yeah, AFSC, sweet potatoes, makes a lot of sense. Well, my AFSC is a 14N, so I'm an intel officer, and I'm currently stationed at the DIA, which is the Defense Intelligence Agency, which is in Washington, D.C. So kind of a crazy first assignment for a lieutenant, because usually we're told, stay clear of the NCR, until, you get summoned to the Pentagon as like a major, lieutenant colonel, etc. But there I am as a lieutenant in the area. But as far as my job goes, I love my job. I love what I'm doing. I love the mission I get to support. And a lot of that is because of the team that I get to work with. I work with a team of contractors and military, so I get to see both that civilian and military side of things. And they're just really cool people. And so I love going to work every day because I get to laugh with them, solve cool problems with them. And then I also have an amazing supervisor, a supervisor who literally is laying the groundwork and teaching me, even if she doesn't know it, what I want to be as a supervisor one day. Because I feel like a lot of times that's what's lost in the military, at the academies, when people forget that they're also, what they do, people are watching, people are learning from. And so shout out to my supervisor, who also is a female USAFA graduate.
Woo woo!
It's just, it's why I love my job, the people I work with, and the missions I get to support.
I would love any supervisor that sent me to Hawaii for 3 weeks on a TDY, so hold that one close, girl. And kind of to preface this next one, me and Isa have recently both watched The Life List on Netflix, so if you haven't watched it already, go give it a watch. But on the movie, they kind of talk about your life list. So Isa, what's one thing that you're gonna check off your life list this year?
Yeah, so like a life list, kind of like a bucket list, what I would like to accomplish. And for me, it's going to sound maybe kind of simple, but I want to learn how to run. And that sounds kind of crazy, I know, because I previously had said that I love working out as one of my hobbies, but I've never really liked to run. And most of that has been because my memories of running include things like getting on the line. And if you're an athlete of any kind, when your coach said get on the line, you were crying inside. That was it.
Yeah.
Practice was
true.
A terrible day.
I'm getting flashbacks right now.
Yeah, so my running history is surrounded around running for punishment, running for conditioning, running for competition, all of that. Running on your Air Force PT test, which we all hate to do. And so I'm on this new journey. I think it's like day 72 or something like that of learning to like running. And as kind of benchmarks for that, I've signed up for a half marathon in March, which will be the longest I've ever run in my life. And then, God willing, a full marathon in October.
Okay, I see you. And, for all of our other running girlies out there, I know a great podcast that you could start listening to on your long runs. So they're called Bring Us Woman. So I'd give them a look. But also, Isa, welcome to your mid-20s. I saw something on my Instagram the other day, like a reel, and it was like, welcome to your mid-20s, where you're either married with children or you're finding running. And I think the latter is perfect for you.
I do really love that you keep saying that I am in my mid-20s because it makes me feel young. But I am fastly approaching my late 20s, if not already considered in my late 20s. So thanks for keeping me young out there. But I do know that based on what the internet influencers tell me, I should be entering my running era.
Auntie running era.
Exactly.
Well, I'll be cheering you on through that. But okay, enough about you. My turn.
All right. I told you I like to yap, so enough with me. So, Allie, what brought you to the Air Force Academy?
So I hadn't even heard of what a service academy was until I was in high school, and a close family friend said, hey, you're pretty decent at school athletics. You got some natural leadership abilities. Have you ever considered the Air Force Academy? And I looked it up the next day, applied immediately, and then got denied.
One of those.
Yeah,
heard
of those.
That one before.
Yeah, but then a few months after, I had Air Force hitting me up again in the portal, and I was like, what more? You've told me no. Like, what could... My ego is already on the ground. And I'm glad I did open that, because I kind of considered being like, you know what, I'm done with you. but I opened it up and got an invitation to the Air Force Academy Prep School, which is one of those avenues that you spoke to. And I think like ultimately why I wanted to really go, or what drew me in, was the challenge. And I feel like once I set my mind on something, I see it through no matter how many obstacles I guess I have to jump through.
Definitely. I mean, I think that's why we're friends, because getting to watch you go through the academy, I've seen so many times when you've been hit by a wall. And rather than falling
Yeah,
over, or maybe you fall over, but you always get
a
back up.
little.
You find a way to climb over the wall, even though you're really short, or run around the wall, maybe dig a tunnel underneath. You always find a way.
Yeah,
And I think like that's why we've always talked about we like delusional goals, because who can tell us no? If you tell us no, we're going to do it anyways.
exactly.
But getting into a little bit more about that, I know you've only been a USAFA grad for a little over a year now, but thus far, what has military life taught you?
Hmm. I think I have gray hairs after year because I've been learning a lot, and I think what I've learned that sticks out the most is that everything comes down to mindset. Like you aren't able to control every challenge that comes your way, but you can always control your attitude and effort. And I think that that attitude and that effort that you bring to the team and to the table every day has ripple effects throughout your organization, whether you honestly realize it or not.
No, exactly. It's crazy how the little things like attitude and effort, which seem little but hard to practice, but such little things that really send ripple effects through the organization. But kind of going into the podcast, what made you want to tell women's stories through the Bring Us Women podcast with me?
Well, when you first asked me to do this podcast, I feel like most girls would have been like, well, actually, I don't know, but I feel like they would have been like, oh, a podcast, you say? With what time? Like, we work full time, military always has us on call, but I didn't hesitate. I was like, you know what? I think what immediately came to my mind was being a junior at the academy, and I wrote a request for funding so that a small group of women could attend the first ever women's military symposium that was being put on in Washington, D.C. The response that came back from the board was that they didn't see why it was necessary or beneficial to send us to this.
Which is
And I really,
crazy.
right. Because to me, I was like, I feel like they couldn't have been more wrong. And I feel like we finally got to yes, because like I told y'all, I'm gonna get to yes. That's one thing I'm gonna do. So we ended up finally getting that yes because a few people saw my delusional vision and were like, girl, I'm behind you, let me back you on this. And really, that visit and getting to meet all of those super powerful women that were in careers that I was aspiring to be in, and we're talking about, so many topics that we just don't, they're so niche, like we don't talk about them a lot, like how to periodize your training, how to deal with different family dynamics while you're serving, how to be a high ranking military officer when your spouse is also a high ranking military officer. Those are just a few examples that come to my mind, but I realized then how badly we need spaces for those real raw messy conversations where women could just kind of, I don't know, lay it out all on the table and inspire others.
No, I think you're exactly right, because even like thinking about those conversations, most of the time I turn to my friends. But my friends are our friends are all lieutenants. So
The blind leading the blind.
literally. So most of the time they don't know. They're like hearing some small fragment of information they might have overheard from somewhere, and it's not enough. So we want to build this place where we can share more information, have those conversations so that, maybe the blind get some glasses and we can move out. We can continue to go.
Thank goodness.
So, anyways, going along your time so far in the military, what's been your biggest leadership lesson so far?
Well, as a baby LT that is also in charge of roughly like 10 airmen at any given time, I love them, but they be trying to pull some fast ones on me. And I think the biggest lesson I've had to learn so far is understanding the difference between justice, grace, and mercy, and knowing when to offer each, knowing when I should show mercy. Maybe there's some things that are going on outside of their work life that they need to be shown a little mercy, but also knowing when that justice needs to be served. And no, you need to show up at 7:30 a.m. and that's that. So, I've really been trying to figure out the difference between these three and when to apply them.
That sounds like a very, very hard lesson and one that I definitely haven't learned. So when I get airmen underneath me, I'll definitely check back in with you to figure out the difference between those three. But, anyways, moving on to some personal life stuff. What are your hobbies?
All right. Well, as you know, because I message you about it frequently, I'm an avid pickleballer. Yes, I was one of those people that invested in an aerodynamic paddle on Black Friday. Maybe I spent a bag on it, but I do not care. You cannot judge me because my pickleball game has improved immensely. And yeah, I've been playing most weekends here. I'm waiting for the cold to go away so I can return as queen of the court, but you know, coming soon. And then I'm also getting into yoga. One of my friends recently invited me to aerial yoga, so clearly my abilities have been overestimated. But I'll keep you guys updated on how that goes, and maybe you can get into your yoga journey as well. Isa, I am in my mid 20s, and I just realized that these joints are not going to be young forever, and we got to start preparing now. We got to get it locked in. So, yeah, that's kind of what I've been up to lately.
That's awesome. I mean, seems like both of us are really leaning into those mid 20, late 20 hobbies that we're told we need to start figuring out.
True.
Well, we heard about my AFSC and what my job is, but what's yours and where has the Air Force taken you?
Big shocker. I am also a 14N, so intel officer. But currently, I'm the officer in charge for operational intelligence for the B1B Lancers, which is under the Global Strike Mission. And kind of what we do is support air crew with some threat analysis. And really, our job is to keep them safe and bring them home safely. So, yeah, really enjoying it so far, though. Our ops tempo has been super high, but I'm kind of loving it because I'm making mistakes and learning every day. So, love it.
I love that for you. The grind keeps grinding.
Yeah. I think what's also cool too is like as you've seen, me and Issa are both intelligence, but we have had such vastly different tracks thus far. I think both of us have really been loving that aspect of intel that pretty much every 4 years you're guaranteed to move into an assignment where it's going to be vastly different than the last one. So just so much room for opportunity and growth and just getting outside of your comfort zone.
No, that's exactly right. I've never met two intel officers who have had the same career path because of all
Yeah.
those drastically different missions we support, which is super cool. And it's always great for us to, hear about what each other's doing because otherwise we would probably never. So that's really cool. So, kind of turning to your life list, what are you most excited about for this year?
All right, ladies, big news. I just found out a few weeks ago that me and my husband will be PCSing to Okinawa in Japan, which was not on our radar whatsoever. But I'm getting ready. I've been watching YouTube videos, trying to do some Duolingo and learn some Japanese. It's a rough work in progress. But anyways, yeah, I'm just excited for the opportunity and kind of just excited to explore a part of the world that I quite honestly never thought that I would be exploring.
No, and I'm so excited for you guys because I went to Japan this summer and it was amazing. So I know you're going to have a great time, especially being a foodie like me. You're going to love it. But I am like silently, freaking out in the back of my head, trying to calculate what the time difference will be, because how am I supposed to yap to you if you're, I don't know, 10, 12, 14 hours ahead? I'm not even sure at this point.
Guys, she will just start cold calling me at work, or maybe even emailing me. So I'm not worried about that at all.
And honestly, if you thought it was hard for us to balance this before with our work schedules, with our life schedules, all of that, this move is going to present a really fun new challenge on recording this podcast. But like we've said many times, you can't tell us no. We are delusional. We continue to find yes, even if it's the most absurd way to yes you've ever seen in your entire life. So really excited for you guys, and don't worry, this podcast isn't going away. Now that you know about a little bit more about us, we should probably tell you how we actually met, because we didn't really mention it at all of how we became friends. And this podcast doesn't exist without that, so let's dive into that.
Guys, picture this. There I was, a little baby basic, shaking in my boots, and Isa was, she was my cadre, and she wasn't just a normal cadre, she was a scary cadre. I was genuinely terrified of her for, I feel like, the good first few months of basic. Isa, can you corroborate that?
I mean, I personally don't think I'm that scary, but I would say I was working out super hard all summer long to make sure that I was ready to impose fear on you.
I was gonna say, your six-pack and arm vein that was sticking out saying hello to me begged to differ, because, girl, I have never seen a woman that was that ripped before in my life, and I was like, here I was over here. Ladies, I could not do a pull-up. Not one. So,
okay,
yeah, let's just say.
But you say you couldn't do a pull-up, but this was honestly one of those first moments where I was like, wow, I see that grit in you. I see how we're very similar in that way. When someone tells us no, we're gonna find a back tunnel and get there anyways, because you couldn't do a pull-up. And quite honestly, as your cadre, I was like, that's simply unacceptable. All of the women in my flight will do pull-ups. It's a must. And I was like, I will get you there. I'm gonna show you the training that you need to do, all of that, so you can get a pull-up. And you could have been like, meh, no thanks. But instead, you were like, yes, give me everything you can do so that I can do a pull-up. And so watching you put in that hard work, so much so that not only did she do a pull-up months later, she went on to try out for the Sandhurst team and make the Sandhurst team and compete for the Sandhurst team at the Air Force Academy. And if you've listened to some of our other episodes, you know what the Sandhurst team is. But essentially, it's a team at the Academy that mirrors the teams that are at West Point, that are doing Army, badass, really hard physical things. And those teams are made up of men and maybe one or two girls on the team. So for Allie to go from doing 0 pull-ups to being on the Sandhurst team was such a crazy transformation, and it just was an attest to all of her hard work that she was willing to put in when someone told her, no, you can't. You're not physically fit enough to do a pull-up. And so that's like one of the first memories I have of Allie, and that kind of like mutual respect that I initially had for you because of that, and just blossomed longer to better friendship.
It did. And honestly, yeah, I really credit Isa with helping me get on the right track at the Academy, because I don't think I would have gone on to do a ton of the cool things that I got to do at the Academy without her mentorship. And now, like, she was that first, like, we talk about those mentors in our life. She was the first mentor that I had for me, the first female mentor. Okay, guys, I said I wouldn't cry. But all that to say, yeah, I wouldn't want to be doing this podcast journey with anyone else, because Isa's inspired me since day one.
So that's why it was a no-brainer. When I went down this delusional route to create a podcast that would accomplish these goals, There was literally no one else, because you and I have always talked about finding those spaces where if we aren't welcome, we're going to make ourselves welcomed, and then finding those other spaces where we can talk about these conversations and wanting to just, at the end of the day, do it ourselves because we didn't find those conversations because they didn't exist. And so I can't imagine doing this podcast with anyone else. And I just really excited to see where it goes, because even though we went from basic Cadet Clark to now, it was worth it.
Agreed. And honestly, that's what Bring Us Women has always been about for us.
Exactly. Real relationships and friendships, shared experiences, and making sure that no one is left out in the cold trying to figure things out alone.
And if you're listening to this and you're early in your career, maybe feeling unsure, overwhelmed, or like everyone else has it figured out except you, we've been there, truly. And we most definitely still feel that way sometimes.
Exactly. And if you're further along in your career, maybe you've already lived through some of these experiences. So we hope that you hear these stories and you realize exactly how much your voice still matters. And maybe that'll make you want to come on for your own episode.
Exactly. Because you know what? This podcast isn't about perfection or having all the answers. Lord knows we do not. But it's about honesty, growth, and creating space for conversations that don't always happen out loud.
Exactly. So whether you're listening on your commute to work or during a workout, or maybe you're hiding in your car for some 5 minutes of peace and quiet, we're really glad that you're here and listening to our podcast.
Thank you for trusting us with your time, your stories, and all of your support. This community is the reason why Bring Us Women exists.
All right. That's enough sharing about Isa and Allie for one episode.
If you need us, we'll be recovering from hearing our own voices back in editing.
So thanks for hanging out with us and getting to know a little bit more about your host, because we sure enjoy getting to know about all of you.
Make sure you follow along, and until next time, be bold, keep leading, and we can't wait to bring you the next woman.
The views expressed on this podcast are our own and do not constitute endorsement by the Department of War, the Department of the Air Force, or the U.S. government.